This is Kol Birama, the podcast of Congregation Ramat Raz 929 Tanakh Project. Join us each day as we study a chapter of Tanakh, building towards completing all 929 together. I'm Rabbi Yoni Zolti, and I'm glad you're here. Bereishit Chapter 9. In yesterday's podcast, we began exploring the pivotal question surrounding the flood narrative. What fundamentally changed? God destroyed the world he had created, and then permitted the survivors to repopulate the earth anew. Why and how would this reconstructed world be different? Why did God promise now, never again, to destroy the world? Today, I want to examine this profound question by focusing on the relationship between humanity and earth, a relationship that lies at the very core of human identity and moral consciousness. Both worlds begin with striking similarity. The earth lies submerged beneath primordial waters. In the original creation, we're told, V'ha'aretz tohu vavohu v'choshech al panei tehom, v'ruach Elohim merachefet al panei tehom. And the earth was barren and empty, and there's darkness all over the deep waters, and the Spirit of God is spread over the waters. After the flood, we find an echo. Vayigberu hamayim vayirbu me'od al haaretz. And the waters expanded and were plentiful above the earth. In both scenarios, the water must now be separated into distinct boundaries, revealing the dry land beneath. Yet here emerges the critical distinction that reshapes everything. In the primordial world, both animals and human beings are created after the earth's formation and emerge from the earth itself. The divine pronouncement to humanity could not be any clearer. Ki afar ata ve'el afar tashuv. For you are dust, and to dust you shall return. In fact, the very name for humanity, Adam, derives from its cognate root Adama, earth. At their ontological core, both humans and animals are earthly creatures, literally the progeny of Mother Earth. In the post-Diluvian world, however, when the dry land is revealed, Noah and the animals already exist independently. They have been preserved within the Ark Sanctuary, emerging not from the earth, but rather from their divine refuge. And therefore, they lack that primordial relationship with the earth, having been created and sustained separately. This distinction proves crucial in understanding the transformed relationship between humanity and the terrestrial realm. In the antediluvian world, an unmistakable intimacy and immediacy characterized the human-earth relationship. Until Adam's presence, we're told in chapter 2, vegetation could not sprout from the earth. When Adam transgressed, the earth itself bore the consequences. Arurah Adama ba'avurecha. Cursed is the ground because of you. This was not merely divine punishment of the earth, but rather the manifestation that human actions generated direct, immediate repercussions upon the physical world. The ground would no longer yield its produce with ease. Human behavior possessed clear, unmediated, and immediate effects upon the surrounding environment. This same pattern continues with Cain. God declares to Cain that the earth has absorbed his brother Hevel's blood. Kol demei achicha tzoakim elai min ha'adama. The voice of your brother's blood cries out to me from the ground. The soil itself recoils from the murder, compelling the murderer Cain to exile from the land. The earth in this case transcends its mere role as a stage for human drama and now becomes an active participant, responding to human choices with immediate and tangible consequences. Consequently, when humanity has become so thoroughly corrupted and persists in transgression, God decrees that the world itself has been defiled. Vayar Elokim et haaretz v'hinei nishchata, ki yishchit kol basar et darko al haaretz. God saw that the earth itself was corrupted, because all living beings had corrupted their ways on the earth. The land itself is now corrupt, contaminated by human and animal moral failure. After the flood, Earth and humanity exist now in separation. Humans are no longer intimately intertwined with the terrestrial realm. Instead, they exist independently, emerging not from the earth, but from the teva, from the ark. Consequently, if humans transgress, their sins no longer implicate or contaminate the earth. The earth will never again face destruction because, regardless of humanity's moral degradation, they can only corrupt themselves, but they can no longer drag the earth into their moral collapse. This is why God can now promise that never again will the world be destroyed. Despite humanity's corruption, the earth itself will no longer be affected and will continue despite humans' actions. This fundamental transformation of humanity's relationship with the earth carries profound ramifications for the nature of moral consciousness itself. In the pre-Diluvian world, the profound connection that exists between humanity and earth rendered explicit commands and consequences unnecessary. This was a reality where morality was woven into the very fabric of existence. One required no elaborate legal code to understand that, for example, murder was wrong. The earth itself would show it to you that this was the truth. Consequences were immediate, physical, and undeniable. Beyond this one prohibition against eating from the tree of knowledge, Adam, Chava, and their descendants receive no other explicit commands. Cain was thus never explicitly commanded against fratricide. Such a prohibition was unnecessary because it didn't require articulation. The earth itself served as judge and jury. Destructive actions elicited destructive earthly responses. The earth absorbed Hevel's blood, crying out the crime and expelling Cain from its embrace. That principle governed all transgressions committed by antediluvian humanity. These acts didn't necessarily violate any explicit divine command, but through their very actions, the land itself became corrupted. This corruption was the natural consequence of their behavior, form of an organic moral system. Before the flood, morality was thus consequence-based and immediate. Commandments were unnecessary because feedback was integrated into the system's very structure. After the flood, however, with humans and animals already formed and separate from the earth, this organic connection ceased to exist. The earth no longer provided automatic moral feedback in our response to human actions. Instead of sin's consequences naturally emanating from the earth, transgressions required explicit articulation. God needed to inform humanity explicitly that murder was forbidden. Shofech dam ha'adam ba'adam damo yishafech. It is forbidden to kill. Chazal, with profound insight, therefore identified this moment as the time when humanity is taught the 7 Noahide commandments, that murder, adultery, idolatry, theft, consumption of flesh from a living animal, blasphemy, establishment of courts, all of these were given to Noah right now at this moment. They had been unnecessary before the flood because the earth fulfilled that function naturally. But now we required explicit commandments to delineate permissible from forbidden behavior, having lost that intrinsic moral compass. Morality now had to be acquired. It was no longer an intuitive faculty. Another consequence of this fundamental shift manifests in humanity's newfound permission to consume animals. Before the flood, both humans and animals maintained vegetarian diets. They shared identical food sources, plants, reflecting their shared terrestrial origins. Emerging from the same source, they existed as almost siblings, forbidden to one another. After the flood, though, humans received explicit permission to consume meat for the first time. Why? Because the intimate connection binding all Earth-originated life had been severed. Humans and animals were no longer siblings emerging from the same terrestrial womb. They had become separate entities who survived the flood within the same ark, but maintained distinct destinies and purposes. They were thus no longer forbidden to consume one another. At the same time, there is a fascinating exception. While the link between humanity and the earth has been severed globally, There is still one place on earth where the ancient rules govern: the land of Israel. Within the land of Israel, human behavior continues to directly affect the earth. The land itself will quote unquote vomit out its inhabitants for moral corruption. As Leviticus makes explicit, the land cannot tolerate neither murder, nor sexual corruption, nor Shabbat violations, or Shemitah neglect, or any other moral transgression. For this reason, we are told, the Canaanite nations preceding the Israelites were displaced. This same principle explained the Israelites' eventual exile. Because of their transgressions, the land itself expelled them. It could not tolerate their moral failings. The heightened moral standards required for dwelling in the land of Israel reflect not some divine favoritism, but rather this preservation of the pre-flood connection between human behavior and terrestrial response within its unique geographical space. The land of Israel, therefore, functions as the place where we can still experience the pre-flood world's reality, where heaven and earth converge, where spiritual actions generate immediate physical consequences, where the earth itself participates in the universe's moral order. In sum, the flood narrative reveals that we inhabit a world where moral behavior has become our conscious responsibility. The intimate connection between human action and earthly response, with the exception for the land of Israel, has been largely severed, compelling us to develop external systems of law, education, and ethical tradition. Yet, nonetheless, though our actions may lack the immediate terrestrial consequences of the antediluvian world, we must recognize that our interactions with one another and with our environment continue to create profound reverberations throughout creation, whether through moral degradation or environmental impact. The earth may no longer serve as our automatic moral guide, but it is nonetheless our duty to pursue moral and ethical behavior in the pursuit of righteousness. Thank you for joining today's learning. See you tomorrow for the next chapter of Tanakh.